Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Witam bardzo serdecznie. Już
I
troszeczkę
would like to welcome
mamy
you at the seminar. Just bear with me a second because we are having some problems with the sound. Okay, so once again, good morning. I would like to welcome Dominic, our mentor. I would like to welcome you, dear participants. Last week we had beautiful spring. Right now in Poland, it's freezing, but I hope we will survive. This is our final online meeting for this project, and it will be dedicated to raising awareness on EWCs. We are happy to see you on this meeting, and I hope together with Dominic we will summarize what we have covered so far. You have the agenda for today's session. You more or less know what time the individual sections will be carried out. So we have definitely covered a lot. We talked about the establishment of EWCs, their composition, their structures. We talked about monitoring their operations by organizations. And thanks to Dominic, we have gained quite a lot of expertise on EWCs. And I believe that during our final meeting in Malaga, we'll have a full picture and we'll know everything about EWCs. We will be able to exchange some views and opinions concerning EWCs. I will be handing over to Dominic in a minute, but let me wish you a very pleasant and productive day. So our meeting is due to end at 2 p.m. And over to you, Dominic. And we are looking forward to working with you even more than so far. Thank you very much for this very kind introduction. I would like to welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to this meeting. Today, we are holding a seminar, and it's a bit different from the previous meetings we had. And we are going to address a wider audience, not just the project participants. And I can see some familiar faces, but also I can see some people that we don't know yet. And today we are going to raise awareness about EWCs. And we will be talking about how they operate, what challenges they are facing. And this meeting is intended to encourage you to make this form of social dialogue more popular. So the agenda for today's session is mostly focused on interactions between participants. And in order to encourage you to promote EWCs, we will talk through some best practices from individual companies and countries. And in the agenda, you can see three major parts of today's session. I am now holding a very short introduction, and success stories will be shared right after my introduction. And these success stories will be about the good aspects of the functioning of EWCs. So, what we want to do here is to show that these bodies for information and consultation are beneficial both for employees and employers. And I'll have prepared some theoretical knowledge for you, and our panelists will give you specific examples of EWCs operating in practice. And after these presentations, we will hold a panel discussion. And during this discussion, we will try to discuss EWCs as an instrument for solving contemporary issues. And we know that contemporary issues are quite complex. We haven't solved the current ones, and the new are emerging as we speak. So we have emerged from the pandemic, and we managed to function online and remotely. But soon afterwards, there was a high inflation and the energy prices soared. And right now, what we are facing is further turbulences, such as the preparation of preparation for any hostilities that may occur. The geopolitical landscape is shifting, and it is definitely affecting the metal sector on which we are focusing in this project. And I forgot to mention about the Green Deal and the digital agenda, but I'm sure you're aware of these programs. And so many different topics and issues are now emerging, so it's even difficult to grasp all of that. And then we'll hold a short break, and then after the break, we will focus on the prospects for the creation of new EWCs in the European Union. And we have invited representatives of some crucial organizations to our panel discussion. And these organizations are quite new to EWCs, and even EWCs sometimes do not even exist in those countries or organizations. And we will discuss their prospects, their considerations, and we will definitely talk about the future of social dialogue in the corporate world. I hope we will have a very interesting discussion. We'll try to explore the reasons why EWCs have not been established in certain parts of Europe. And I hope it will be very enriching for all of us. And this seminar will be concluded by something very interesting, like a cherry on top of a cake. So, actually, these are the final moments of our project, and we are ready to share with you the key deliverables of our work, of our explorations. So I will be sharing with you what we have developed so far, because we have some quite interesting materials that can become quite useful. So without further ado, let me start my presentation, unless some of you would like to speak now, or you would like to propose a change to the agenda, or do you have any other comments? If not, then I will go straight to my presentation. I can see no one raising a hand, so I will just share my screen and start my presentation.
Mhm. Czy wszystko widać?
Can you see it well?
Tak, widać, tak, tak.
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
E, Bardzo krótko, oczywiście dla tych, którzy jeszcze
So,
wcześniej nie
this is a
byli,
very short reminder. It's only for those who have not taken part in our previous meetings. So, this is our partnership in this SUSEP project, and we are among the organizations listed on the slide. The key leader of the project is the trade union of ArcelorMittal Poland in Krakow, and also the head of that trade union is the project leader, and he's present with us today. There are also some co-applicants that take part in this project. These are both trade unions and employers organizations. From Poland, we also have the Lesser Poland Association of Employers called Leviathan. We also have a trade union from Croatia. We also have SMA, organization or foundation from Italy. We have the Confederation of Employers from Andalusia in Spain, but there are also some associate partners to our project, and let me name them. It's Comisiones Obreras, which is a trade union operating in the industrial sector in Spain. We also have Cartel Alpha, it's a trade union from Romania, and we also have a employers organization from Romania. So we can see that we have quite a varied group of partners. And the purpose of our project was to provide some materials and comprehensive support. And also, we wanted to build the capacity of partner organizations on the creation and functioning of EWCs. But we also wanted to strengthen the operation, the setting up of new EWCs in the European Union. And to this end, we have taken some steps, and I will be taking you through these steps in a moment. As you can see, 5 countries took part in this project: Croatia, Italy, Poland, Spain, and Romania. So countries that represent the so-called peripheral countries to the European Union. Maybe except Italy, which is often referred to as the country of the old European Union. Nevertheless, they demonstrate the North European model of industrial relations. And let me emphasize that we have talked to both trade unions and employer organizations, which is a very valuable, and this does not have to happen very often in European projects. It has given us an insight into both perspectives, but also we were able to show the benefits for both parties. And when I say benefits, I mean here benefits of social dialogue and including employees in information and consultation activities. Okay, in this project, we have taken several steps. We have engaged in several activities. We started from the diagnostic stage, and each partner from 5 countries was expected to prepare a country report. And in this report, each partner assessed the functioning of EWCs in that given country. And the partners gained experience from the EWCs they have had contact with or they have worked with in the metal industry. We used varied research tools. We first of all conducted desk research. We conducted 2 focus group discussions, and we also carried out a number of in-depth interviews to gather as much information from various sources as possible, because based on that, we wanted to build a comprehensive picture of the EWC's functioning in a given country. Apart from that, and in the meantime, we were working on the developing of a number of tools to support the partners, but not only partners, to support anyone interested in the outcome of this project. So we developed the so-called toolkit for EWCs, and we also compiled a practical guide for EWCs, and we also established an e-learning platform for learning in your own time, learning individually, getting information from the platform and using it whenever possible. So all these 3 instruments will be demonstrated at the end of our seminar. And these are the project deliverables that will remain long after our project comes to an end. And these tools are very informative as regards the functioning of the EWCs. And we have shared our experiences during a number of meetings. One of them was an online meeting that we held in September last year, as far as I remember. We also carried out 2 training sessions, and these sessions were focused on specific topics relating to the functioning of EWCs. On top of that, we also provided some consultancy on EWCs. And by doing this, we actually grasp an idea of what issues EWCs are facing right now. And the partners could use such consultancy services. And today, we have moved on to the dissemination phase. And that's why we are meeting for an online seminar to raise awareness and to promote the idea of EWCs. So we want to, first of all, talk about the positive aspects of EWCs, but we also want to provide the basic information of what EWCs are. And this project will be completed by a final conference in Spain, and this will be the only one in-person meeting planned in this project. And this is still ahead of us, so it's in the future. And I hope this will be an opportunity for us to spend even more time to share experience and to talk about the final conclusions from this project. And as part of dissemination, we are going to take some other steps. We have created some newsletters. We have developed some graphics to promote the project. We created also roll-ups and developed promotional articles. And soon, in the next few days, a new video will be created to perform actually the same function, to disseminate information about EWCs. So we have taken a number of different promotional activities, and this was highly recognized by the European Commission, the provider of funds to this project. So we actually want to focus on the priorities of this project, for which we have been assigned some tasks, some funds, and that's why we want to promote EWCs as the form of social dialogue. So this has been, in short, a summary of the SUSEP project and the steps we have taken so far. Most of you know what we have done because you have also done this with me. But for people who are new to this project or who are just meeting with us for the first time, it will be a comprehensive summary of what we have covered so far. Now let me take you through short description of EWCs. So what is an European Works Council? Whenever I speak about EWCs, I mentioned that EWCs are one unique body, unprecedented enterprise, because they only function in the European Union. So they are quite unique in that respect. And they can actually be only established in large multinational companies that have establishments in the member states, and no such laws or legal frameworks exist anywhere in the world except the EU. And they are an important part of the European industrial relations, and they distinguish these industrial relations from the relations in other parts of the world. What's also worth mentioning is that EWCs are actually the answer to globalization processes undergoing all over the world. And they help to establish a transnational, company-wide form of social dialogue, which is quite unique in its nature. So social dialogue can be practiced not only at the sectoral level or national level or company level, it can also be practiced at the transnational level.
So this dialogue can happen at the multinational level, at the multinational corporation level. So what EWCs are? They are permanent bodies that are established in transnational companies, and They have competences
informowanie i
on
prowadzenie
informing and organizing consultations with employees on
ponadnarodowych,
transnational matters.
czyli te kwestie, które
So
dotyczą
the issues pertaining to
pracowników więcej niż
employees
jakiejś
in
korporacji
more
mogą
than
stać
one
się
branch of a corporation might become a subject of information or consultation within EWC.
można, w których firmach
So
można
where
takie
in which
korporacje
companies you can
zastosować.
set up
W
EWCs?
korporacjach
It is
ponadnarodowych
about
zatrudniających co
transnational
najmniej 1000
companies that
pracowników
employ at least 1,000 employees in the member states, and
i zatrudniających co najmniej
they need to employ at least
w
150
każdym
employees in each
co najmniej dwóch
of at
oddziałach.
least two member
Więc jak
states.
sami Państwo widzicie, to
So, as
takie
you can
naprawdę
see, the
duże
point is that it pertains
przedsiębiorstwa.
to
Mamy
large
założenie NZ
enterprises who can establish an EWC. It might be a central management. There is a possibility like that. Although in practice, this mechanism is used rarely. Most of the time, an EWC is initiated by a group of at least 100 employees
reprezentujących co najmniej dwa oddziały
representing at least two branches
korporacji.
of the corporation, which is the transnational corporation.
Mam tutaj garść danych na temat
Here, some facts and figures
tego, ile tych europejskich ram
about the
było
numbers,
różnorodnych,
basically,
firm
of EWCs. And, well, the data is not like the latest data because it was gathered in 2021.
Jeśli się nie mylę, są to
But
ostatnie,
if I'm not mistaken, it is the most recent data which is available. So
ponad 3,5 tysiąca
more than 3.5 thousand multinational companies potentially have the right to establish an EWC,
które zatrudniają
and they
około
employ
30 milionów
almost
pracowników.
30 million employees. So that's quite a large group of workers.
Takie jest
And
pole, tak?
so
Firmy, które są uprawnione.
these are the companies which are entitled to set it up. But as for EWCs that have been actually established, obviously the number is lower.
Niewiele ponad
It is slightly above 1,000 companies, out of which 390, so almost 400,
poza europejską.
are based outside of the European Economic Area.
W 2008 roku
In 2008,
aż 14 milionów
as
pracowników
many as 14 million workers
w firmach
were represented
powołano do
by
życia.
the European Works Councils, so more or less half of
Potencjalnie są
those who are potentially entitled to set up EWCs. So the growth potential is there.
dwukrotne, tak? Czyli ani
So the number of EWCs might be even doubled, or the number of workers that can benefit from that.
powołanie swych reprezentantów do takiego ciała mogłoby się
The number of workers that could have their representatives in EWCs. As for more statistics
jak wygląda rozkład
and a
powstawania
breakdown
NZ-ów, no to
as to where and how EWCs were established, you can have a look at this slide.
podstawą do funkcjonowania
The foundation for functioning of EWCs is the directive, which was adopted in 1996. Then there was a period of time for transposition of the directive, and you may notice that in 1996, it was the year when there was a jump in the number of established EWCs. You can see this highly significant growth, but there was still a dynamic increase till the end of the 1990s, and since the beginning of the 21st century, the growth is there, but the dynamics has changed, is much smaller. So I don't want to go into too many details here, because basically it is just an introduction. My presentation is fairly general, but you may notice that there are EWCs which were set up on the basis of pre-directive regulations, and the biggest orange bar that you can see in the slide, so it was in 1996, are precisely EWCs, or the majority of them were established on the basis of regulations which had been in place before the directive was adopted. Obviously, it leads to certain complications, difficulties, because
w miarę rozszerzania się funkcjonowania
as
korporacji międzynarodowych, takich
transnational companies were growing in number,
otwierania oddziałów w kolejnych
because new
krajach,
branches were opened, new establishments were opened in new countries, then it leads to the situation where representatives in these new countries do not have the same rights. They cannot post or send employees and send their representatives to a new EWC. I'm not going to talk too much about details. I'm just signaling that it might pose certain difficulties, and due to that, there will be an amendment of the directive, and the amendments are being prepared at the level of the European Union. Polish motive, the Polish presidency in the European Union is dealing with that, is dealing with the amendments to the directive. And as for headquarters of transnational companies with EWCs, you can see that the biggest number of these headquarters are in Germany. So you can see that it is the orange bar, so this active bodies, active EWCs, and the gray one shows non-active EWCs, so they had been established and they ceased to operate for a certain reason. And number two is the United States. Obviously, they do not belong to the European Union, but still they have their headquarters and they have their branches in the European Union countries. So it is number two in this slide. And then another large economy in Europe, France, the United Kingdom, Sweden is quite high in this ranking, and then the Netherlands, and another one, another European country, and more, so Switzerland, Belgium. And as for the countries represented in our partnership, we are not too high on this slide, on this graph. In Poland, there are only 2 EWCs, so Poland is somewhere towards the end of this list. This slide, well, should be a bit comforting actually to us, because it shows the breakdown into sectors. When we look at EWCs according to sectors in our project, we focus on the metal sector, and we focus on steel production. And in this particular sector, we have the biggest number of EWCs. So that's a kind of economic activity, which is then translated into a high unionization degree, or perhaps it is capital intensive, so it leads to a great number of transnational corporations because they are the main player in the sector. That is why in this particular sector, the majority of establishments have the right to establish EWCs. So you can see that we see the biggest number of EWCs there. So the metal sector in a very broad sense of the word, and then number two is services, basically. So the companies in which employees can unionize, can set up a trade union, Uniglobal, and then other sectors follow. The least popular is the public sector, because in the public sector, it is quite a rare, or let me be more precise, in the sector of public services. There, you don't have too many multinational companies. The question arises, what can it be there? Namely, it might be like energy production companies in the public services, because there might be transnational corporations that belong to the state, or they might also belong to private owners. And more facts and figures this time on what is there, namely who belongs to EWCs, and what about their functioning? So some more information about their functioning, about social consultations. So we are not surprised that members of the EWC are mostly members of trade unions. 84% are union members.
Najczęściej mężczyźni.
Mostly they are male.
Pewnie nie do końca pocieszająca informacja, że
Maybe this bit of information is not very comforting or not very positive, that you not see any gender balance. So perhaps we should work more on it in the future
bardziej zachęcać właśnie
in order to encourage
kobiety do tego, żeby
more women
na
to
kandydowanie.
become candidates
Ale
for
może częścią odpowiedzi też jest
EWCs. Maybe the partial answer is in the previous slide. If EWCs are more frequent in the metal sector, and the metal sector is dominated
pracowników płci męskiej,
by men,
rzeczy po prostu ta nierównowaga tutaj
it is quite logical here that this imbalance is
Ale co
then
mamy dalej?
translated into the participation in WCs. And more facts and figures, the role of trade unions is highly significant here because almost 60%
członków RZ-ów w jakiś sposób
of EWC members and their functioning is coordinated by a trade union, be it on a national level, on a federation level. And even though EWCs are coined as the bodies where not only union members may belong, but it turns out that it is mostly the trade union that has the right potential, the right scope of knowledge to prepare representatives to be competent participants of EWC's activities. Federations of the EU level play a very important role in setting up and opening EWCs, then at the stage of negotiations, of agreements. So, despite of the fact that the legislator intended to open the perspective for participation of non-unionized employees, at the end of the day, it is a trade union or trade unions that play a key role at the functional level of EWCs. Almost half of EWCs in Europe meet annually, so once a year. It is a plenary meeting that I have in mind, so a general meeting, if I can call it like that, even though it might be not the most precise phrase, but it is like a general meeting of all the members, and then all the most important issues are discussed for a given year, and 41% have 2 meetings a year. Well, I would say it is an example of good practice because it is a solution which is slightly above the minimum established by the directive, because the directive imposes in a way that it is at least 1 a year. If it is twice, obviously it is simply good practice. It is even better because it increases the opportunity for improving the quality of decision making and consultation processes. I know our time is quite limited, so perhaps I will be a bit more brief. So let me show you the next slide where I'm trying to show the stages of information exchange or consultation. So stages where they can take place. The best practice is that consultations are organized before the decision-making process, regardless of what the decision is about, whether it is about the corporate policy to be introduced, or is it about introduction of a digitization process or improvements or streamlining of any production process or anything else, or introduction of an anti-discriminatory policy. It is definitely the best idea to consult this decision before it is made, but only 21% declared that the consultation is organized before the decision is made. The biggest number of people said that consultation takes place when the decision is almost finalized, at the stage of finalization of the decision, but still it is not implemented. The implementation stage has not started yet. So it is about 40% of consultations. at this stage. Maybe this is not the worst solution, but this previous solution is so much better. So before the decision is made, for various reasons, it is the best solution. I will elaborate on that in a moment. What's quite worrying is that there is quite a high percentage of EWCs where matters are consulted after the decision is made at the stage of implementation. So almost 20% say that yes, it happens at the implementation process, and then almost 10% say it is consultation after implementation. So there is not much chance to change anything. The only thing you can change is to introduce some minor changes to the decision that has already been made and implemented.
No właśnie, po co te europejskie
So
rady zakładowe?
why
Czemu?
do we need EWCs at all? What is their purpose? What are the benefits for employees? I guess you may come to certain conclusions by now on the basis of the facts I've presented, but
Staramy się przedstawić na
I will try to summarize it as
Przede
well.
wszystkim chodzi o to,
So,
że pracownicy
what are the
mają
benefits?
dużo lepszy dostęp do informacji.
Employees may have a better access to information, the information about the situation in a given corporation. It is about the corporate level, not only about the branch level in a given country. It is generally about the entire corporation, because as you know very well, there are some distortions, or the information is filtered at different stages depending on how the information is cascaded from the central management and to the national branch, and very often lower to different departments in a given company on a national level, even though it is all happening in the entire corporation. So here we have direct access to information, to the decisions which are made on the level of the central management, which give us an opportunity for employees and their representatives to react faster, to express their opinions, or possibly correct the decision if the decision was made and there is a possibility for correction. So let me emphasize it that we are talking about EWC's right to information and consultation. EWCs doesn't have right to negotiate or conclude agreements or collective agreements per se. It does not it is not mentioned in the directive on EWC, so we have to state it very clearly that these are like soft competences which are given to EWCs. The trade unions at the national level, at the company level, have broader competences because trade unions have the right to sign collective bargaining, collective agreements. They have the right to negotiate, and then the decisions like that are binding. EWCs do not have these rights, even though I have said that, well, there might be a situation that you may discuss but discuss transnational company agreements. They are discussed with representatives in WCs. They may play a very important role in this process, together with federations, European federations, both on the side of employees and on the side of employers. Yet, having said that, they do not follow from the rights which are enshrined in the directive. So we have to be very well aware of that.
Ale nawet przy tych nieco węższych uprawnieniach,
but even though with smaller competences on access to information, on consultations, it is easier to foresee certain changes. You may pass on information to trade unions on the national level, so slightly lower level, so the trade unions may become active on the company level, on the national level, and what is more, the possibility to exchange information between employees with an individual member states or individual countries, and then it may lead to trans-border solidarity, and you can like have a look at working conditions in other branches, in other establishments, and the WCs are slightly, well, we can say it is a tool for convergence, for improving working conditions in individual countries. Obviously, we have still this reservation that there might be different economic contexts and there might be different contexts for collective agreements, but still there is knowledge about solutions which are in place in a neighboring country, for instance.
Informacji i konsultacji, ERZ-y są formą
So
promowania tej
EWCs
budowania
also help to
kultury,
promote social
dialogu
dialogue.
na poziomie
They actually help to
korporacyjnym,
build a culture of social dialogue at a corporate level. And this empowers employees. They feel they have more to say in a company. And this also
podniesienie satysfakcji
definitely
pracowników
improves their
z,
satisfaction
z
at the
bycia
workplace
docenianych,
because they
włączanych
feel
w proces
that they are appreciated and that they are an important part of the decision-making process. Also, EWCs help to enhance rights for worker representatives. And we already mentioned here that it's not only at the company level or sectoral level, but also employees are represented at the corporate level and the transnational level. And this is quite significant for employers as well. Employers enjoy a better reputation to the external world because they are seen as a party engaging in social dialogue and they attract talent and they are more transparent in their operations. So this all contributes to improving their reputation versus the stakeholders as well. So this is definitely something that can improve a company's standing or even can improve their situation on the stock exchange. And also, large companies have the reporting obligations, and when they include an element about reporting on NWCs, this also is seen as positive, and these companies enjoy a better reputation because they conform to the European standards, they engage in environmental protection, etc. Moving on to the next slide, and now I am going to go through the benefits for employers. You often hear that people believe that employers treat EWCs as the tool for employees, a benefit for employees, that creates some obligations for the employers. And it's not the employer's first thought that the EWCs are beneficial to them as well. But I would like to present some arguments demonstrating that EWCs can also deliver quite tangible benefits to international, transnational corporations. And let me name them. First of all, enhanced communication is a clear benefit. For many corporations, it's often an issue that corporate strategies never trickle down to the employee on the shop floor, or even if they do trickle down, they are somehow distorted. So EWCs can help to provide greater consistency in corporate communication. So you can provide information to the employees about strategies, about decisions to be made, and that channel of communication is quite clear, straightforward, direct, and it does not have to rely on the corporate structures, on the management, on the different levels, etc. You can communicate with the employees directly through their representatives. Also, another benefit is to get insights from employees. Managers tend to present a situation in a more optimistic way than it really is, especially when communicating with their line managers. And the employees' voice and representatives' voice is also interesting to hear. And then the company gets a fuller picture on what is actually going on. And the employer can also hear about various issues about which the top management is silent. And then it informs the decision-making process, which is a benefit. And EWC can also help to release tensions or to diagnose any issues at a very early stage before they develop into something more serious, such as a collective dispute or a strike. Because time is of the essence in such a situation. And when the information flow is smooth, then it helps to dissipate any issues at a very early stage, because the company can react faster to any emerging issue or boiling point. Also, employee engagement is greater and they feel more satisfied with their work, which is also good for the employers. And why is that? Because they simply are more loyal to the company, they are more productive, the retention of staff is greater, and for the employer, it's always costly to recruit and train new employees. And also, when employees are involved in the decision-making process, then they are the advocates for that decision and they do not oppose against it, which is also good for the operation of the company. Also, we've spoken about complying with regulations, we have spoken about the reporting obligations, and the EWCs can also be quite helpful in that respect. I have also spoken about the corporate social responsibility, which is easy to demonstrate if you have a working and thriving EWC in your establishment. And also, I spoke about the corporate image and reputation, and these are the clear and undisputed benefits for a company if they have an EWC established. I am running a bit late and I apologize for that, but I wanted to give you a description of EWCs in a nutshell, just the gist of information about this important body. And those of you who have not heard about EWCs, I hope it's going to be useful. And so this has been my introduction to our seminar. And I would like now to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is showcasing the success stories on EWCs. I encourage you now to listen to Józef Kawula, our leader, to talk us through some good ideas on the operation of EWCs. Of course, I would like to just comment on one thing about your presentation, the establishment of EWCs. In ArcelorMittal, all trade unions came to an agreement to establish an EWC. But what turned out is that in these individual locations, for example, Poland, Spain, Portugal, Romania, the corporations that operate there, and then they are actually they have actually included a clause in which trade unions are the only party authorized to establish EWCs. So we have come to that conclusion, and this is a good thing for us. Okay, moving on to the success stories. In the past meetings, I mentioned that we had negotiated for 5 years on the agreement and on the rules of operation, and this is going to be a single page. So far, we had one general meeting at the end of the year, and in the new agreement, there will be 4 general meetings. One will be to summarize the previous year and to train the members of the EWC and the deputies, because every member of an EWC has a deputy, and if the member is unable to attend a meeting, then it's the deputy who attends the meeting. So we have not reached the agreement yet, but there is a will on both sides, and the employers and all the trade unions are willing to sign the agreement in the draft version that has been discussed so far. And I hope we will achieve to do that during the general meeting, because there are signs indicating that this could be possible. So what have we managed to achieve? We were quite persistent.
Recording
And
stopped.
actually, we were very adamant about certain issues. Sorry.
Recording
there is
in
something.
progress.
Sorry. Should I go slower a bit?
Okej. Tak, dobrze, dziękuję. No, w każdym
All
razie,
right. I should
udało
continue,
nam
so
się,
let me do that.
fajne rzeczy zawrzeć w tym
So,
porozumieniu.
in the new
Na
agreement,
przykład pierwszy
some
taki
nice
punkt jest
features
taki,
will be
to jest tylko
included.
taka promesa,
So,
przyrzeczenie,
there is
że
just a
z naszej
promise to
strony
sign
staramy
this
się, proszę państwa,
agreement,
wymóc
and we manage to ensure that the owner of ArcelorMittal Europe agrees to 3 meetings per year as per the directive, and these will be for consultation and information. And the owner and our employer wants to
ta spółka się nazywa BCOE, to są
move this BCUE company responsible for HR to India. So they want to relocate that. But in order to do that, they must consult with us. And right after Easter, we are going to start negotiations. And then in May, we're also going to hold negotiations for 3 days. And later on, we will have the general meeting. And during that meeting, we will either express our consent to the relocation or not. And during that meeting, also, I hope to sign this agreement for an indefinite period of time. But usually such meetings are signed for 2 years. Our meeting is probably going to be concluded for an indefinite period of time, but with the possibility to terminate it at any time. So this is our victory, let me call it that. We have used the support of an European organization, Industrial, so they provided us with very good and strong support. These people know the law in Luxembourg because, as you know, the headquarters of our company is Luxembourg. So we are ruled by the laws of Luxembourg. So ArcelorMittal has its headquarters in Luxembourg, and we are governed by the Luxembourg law. I don't want to take up too much of our time. That's why I think I will now wrap up. But if you have any questions, I'll be here all day. Thank you.
Bardzo serdecznie dziękuję.
Thank you very much, Youssef, for this presentation of best practices from ArcelorMittal. As you can see, even though there are some rights for employees to be informed and consulted, it is merely the starting point to actually shape the practice for the industrial relations between the employer and the employees. So the space for practicing the information and consultation activities is quite wide. And we have to take into account that ArcelorMittal is a global company. It has employees in many various countries, and the EWC will have representatives from all these countries. And also, let us not forget, the situation is highly dynamic. And also, there is a particular culture in place in a given organization, and it's mostly shaped as we on an ongoing basis. So and a lot it depends on the involvement and engagement of both parties and on their goodwill. Thank you very much, József, for this presentation. And now I would like to ask a representative of the Spanish trade unions to tell us about the best practice from their country. So tell us, how do EWCs operate in your countries? Is it you, Alvaro, who's going to speak? Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Dominique for his presentation, and that presentation was highly interesting, as always. I wanted to tell you about two success stories from Spain. One of them is about negotiations, and the negotiations took place in relation to EWCs. Okay, these maybe success stories are not that fresh, but they are still very interesting and relevant. And one of them relates to the restructuring processes. One of the companies is Astop and the other is Reticent Group. And these are railway companies. And they actually manufacture railway cars. Some time ago, both companies announced that they will dismiss people. One of them said it will cover Valencia, and Aston wanted to dismiss people in Barcelona. And quite large layoffs were planned. And both companies first presented arguments that this is not a transnational issue because we are laying off people only in Spain. That was their argument. And that's why they believed an EWC has no say in this. But both companies actually relocated their production. That's why we believed it is a transnational issue, because on the one hand, we lost some jobs in Spain, but in other countries, the situation was very relevant because new jobs were created. So us, members of the EWC, actually succeeded because we ensured that EWCs joins the conversation. In Alstom, a negotiation was held for 7 months. And without the negotiations, the employer was not allowed to lay off people. That's very important. In Spain, when a company plans layoffs, they have 30 days to negotiate with the workforce, and they need to determine what social protection will be provided to the employees, what compensation they will receive. And that 30-day period cannot be extended under the Spanish law. So this is a very short period of time, just 30 days to reach an agreement. For both companies, actually, the running of that period of 30 days was stopped because trans-European negotiations were held. And actually, we had 6 months to negotiate instead of these 30 days. And when that 30-day period started running, Then earlier, as part of EWCs, we managed to agree on a lot of topics at the European level. So we definitely managed to reduce the number of people to be dismissed, and also we minimized the impact on employees. And it was the first time that we carried out this in Spain. What we did was we relocated some of the Spanish employees to positions in Germany. And this was thanks to our negotiations. Regrettably, only a few people decided to move to Germany. Actually, people are not willing to move even within a country, and moving to a different country with your family, that's a far more difficult issue. But EWCs were quite effective, and they did some good work, and then 5 or 6 people took advantage of the solution that we negotiated. And this example showed us that an EWC can be quite effective, and we have long-standing traditions in our country with EWCs, and we work closely with industrial and other confederations, but we also work closely with trade unions from other countries, and it's crucial. And by doing this, we are able to put some pressure on the employer and on the central management.
Thank you very much, Alvaro, for presentation of the good practice. And I have to admit that it is a non-standard practice in such a way that, as I've suggested before that, EWC has the rights to information exchange and consultation. Restructurization is a very important element, but the employer doesn't have an obligation to conclude agreements in this scope. So the example presented by Alvaro shows that such an agreement might be concluded. So EWCs might be helpful in working out some very specific solutions, not only passing on information, but also looking for solutions which are beneficial for employees. So we have heard that national trade unions played a very significant role in this scenario. So this synergy effect has to be emphasized. It seems to be of key importance. And thanks to the fact that apart from trade unions, there are additionally EWCs, the synergy effect could have taken place. So it seems that it wouldn't have been possible to have such a beneficial solution if EWC did not play its role. So it was an added value in the entire process. Definitely from the perspective of employees, that restructuring was including or afflicting their life. So thank you for sharing this experience. And perhaps we should now move on to the panel discussion, but perhaps, well, you have questions now, questions connected with contributions by Józef Kabula or Alvaro Garrido. Maybe you would like to ask about details. Anyone? All right, I can see that our colleague from Croatia would like to ask a question. The floor is yours. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Greetings. So, well, I'm not sure whether I have heard correctly, but it seems to me that only trade unions select EWCs. Did I understand correctly? Is it surprising to me? It is weird because we might have EWC with no trade unionists there. I know it is not the subject matter of our debate, but I think I've misunderstood. Yes, it is not only trade unions, but in ArcelorMittal Europe, trade unions, all of them that operate them, came together with the employer that they will select members of EWCs. It is also beneficial for the employer because, as Dominic has mentioned, as it was said in the discussion, trade unions have already had a lot of knowledge about the company operations. They have a lot of respect, but obviously, as you are saying, you are absolutely right. That in a certain company, there may not be a trade union at all, and then non-trade unionists select representatives to EWCs. Yes, you are correct. It doesn't have to be a trade union. Yes, we have to say very clearly that the right to select or to nominate representatives is not limited in any way. But I guess it is connected with the high degree of unionization in the corporation. That is why the decision was made like that, that here representatives are also trade unionists, so that the social dialogue has the right structure and it is the clearest. Yes, Dominic, it is 60% of 60% of TU density in every organization. So I guess it was the decisive factor for such a solution. So yes, high level of TU density, and yes, it is typical of ArcelorMittal establishments. And that is why it was simply natural that the employer still wanted to simply continue the conversation or the contacts with trade union, because the mechanisms of social dialogue have already been established. They are very smooth operating and so on. It was just continuation of the previous situation. Thank you for this question. Absolutely justified. So many thanks for that, and many thanks for additional information from Józef Kawula. And now it's time to move on to another item on our agenda, and it is a panel discussion. On our agenda, we have planned 3 contributions or 3 presentations, and after these contributions, I think we'll have some time for a panel discussion, so like still 45 minutes before the break. So the subject matter of our panel discussion will be new challenges, contemporary issues for EWCs. So the question is whether EWCs are an efficient, good, appropriate instrument for tackling these contemporary issues that both employees and corporations face nowadays. Can they solve them, help to solve them, discuss them? I've mentioned the scope of these issues in the beginning, so it might be decarbonization, digitalization, COVID, lockdowns, and then building resilience to a new geopolitical system. So a very broad range of contemporary issues. I'm quite curious of your opinions, because especially this last issue is something new, and I'm quite curious about your experiences in your organizations, because these are the things that have been happening in the last few weeks, actually, the last several weeks, like welfare state issues and so on. So there are so many topics to be discussed. Maybe according to the agenda, we should start with a representative of the Croatian trade unions, and then Cartel Alpha from Romania, and the employers organization from Spain. So who would like to take the floor on behalf of Croatian trade unions and tell us more about the most recent of experiences that EWCs have?
Nie wiem, jak państwo tutaj podzielili się
I'm
rolami.
not sure how you have decided to split your roles in our meeting today. That is why I haven't mentioned any specific name of the person, but I'm sure you have a representative which is to speak on your behalf, on behalf of Croatian trade unions. Darko, all right, so the floor is yours. Over to you. Good morning, everyone. Just a few words at the beginning. And maybe Sinisha would like to add something to my contribution. So, my initial remarks. We as Croatia are a small country, and EWCs in which we function, in which we have our representatives, are not a decisive factor which might have a very significant or very dominant influence on the situation, but obviously we follow the changing situation and all the challenges which are important to all of us, and we want to try and work on them. So maybe just several reflections and remarks. I can see many benefits and many opportunities, but I also notice challenges in terms of functioning of EWCs. It is a body which helps us to deal with economic conditions, decarbonization, or the Green Deal, digitization. All these topics are here to stay. These are very important matters, and we are definitely undergoing a process of transformation. We'll have to handle and face the consequences, like social consequences, of all these processes. On the one hand, I would say that the benefits of our EWCs, the advantage is that these are different bodies, different mechanisms for social mechanism and sharing information, organizing consultations, than in a classical collective bargaining processes. Maybe thanks to that, it is easier to have certain discussions, to propose certain topics, because in EWCs, it is easier to have such a conversation. It is easier than in the processes of collective bargaining, because these processes are more specific, and then you have a very specific scope, like specific solutions that you can discuss there. On the other hand, these topics cannot be resolved on a national level or only on the level of negotiations nationally. We need this European transnational level. So for 3 years, we have been talking a lot about geopolitics. For 2 years, we have been talking about inflation. This year, we have had an additional new shock, and we see a lot of media coverage of this subject matter. So politics, politicians, experts, business people talk about it a lot. So there is a lot of uncertainty, many fast changes. So many issues pertaining to trade, the future trade, recession. One objective factor is as follows, that recently we focus on the economic situation and the consequences of recent events can be felt and noticed on a national level. For the last 2 years, we have witnessed inflation, and for 30 years, we didn't have inflation in Croatia, which means that collective bargaining especially focus on salaries, and that are very important for us, and I would say that these collective bargaining processes are more intense at the moment than beforehand. 5 or 10 years ago, if anyone mentioned that we would talk about 10 or 20% raises of salaries and the next year it will happen again, I would have been very much surprised. At the same time, in Croatia, we have an additional problem, I would say, because well, it also led to a large increase of minimum wages. And it is the subject matter which was absolutely necessary because we agreed that the minimum wages 3 or 4 years ago was too low as compared to what is said by trade unions, as compared to an average salary. But in our case, it has happened in parallel with inflation, and it had an impact on distribution of salaries. It is one of our big problems. So there are differences between salaries, between the simplest jobs and medium-level jobs. So these differences are small at the moment. If we have the metal trade union and other trade unions in Croatia, we can see in these areas, we can see many companies where differences in salaries are actually inadequately small. So people perform their jobs and they are of different complexity. And there are also jobs that actually require no qualifications whatsoever, and there are jobs which require very specific qualifications and a high level of responsibility. And these differences are actually quite symbolic now, so they are quite insignificant. There are extreme cases where there are no differences between these two groups of salaries, so it is made up for by different benefits and by like lack of taxation for certain benefits. So, well, that's how it is made up for or reduced in a way. And at the moment, it is a big problem for us and a hot topic for our discussions. And it is quite rare that there is 1 week or even one day without any complaints from our members on precisely these topics. So we have to handle that. That's quite frequent for trade unions, that you have very hot topics, very important issues. Maybe they are not important on a macro level, they are not important for global processes, but on our level, nationally, for our sector, they are significant, and our members are very much interested in that because they feel it influences their lives very closely, and then it has quite poor consequences, I would say. So it is one of the topics which is quite a limiting factor for us and decreases our capacity to handle something else. So as the trade union, we don't have time to deal with, I don't know, Green Deal consequences, decarbonization, digitization. And as a result, it is difficult for us to be more active on the issue of EWCs. As I have stated at the beginning of my contribution, regardless of how I perceive EWCs, because I can see that they are a very important tool and they have a lot of potential which should be tapped into. And Dominic in his presentation has mentioned that it is a unique mechanism which does not exist anywhere else in the world. So that's the best what we have. And I guess it is a very good initial step towards certain solutions. Well, we need this toolkit, we need these tools, and then we can do certain things on a transnational level so that collective bargaining can be improved and elevated to the global economy, because we can see on this interlinks within the economy, we can see that decisions made in one place may influence working conditions in another country. So we can see that this contact is very complex, and it is, well, certain processes are also unavoidable. And we can see that in these processes, or in the process of European integration, well, these processes cannot be stopped. So it is very important that economic integration is also something that accompanies, or is, sorry, accompanied by the social dimension. Otherwise, these processes will not be just, will not be fair. So I am aware that it is quite a general statement on my part. And when we think about the future of the subject matter, it is very important that we can continue our activities and our conversations in a more specific manner, as we do that today and as we have done it during other projects. But for people who are our members, who are our activists, for many people who are active in the trade unions, these are very general topics. These are very general topics which are quite difficult to implement in their everyday activities. That is why we should promote good practices. We should discuss more specific agreements that have been concluded by the European Works Councils.
If we don't do that to a much greater extent than so far, then we risk that we will keep repeating, just redoing just very general discussions, which will not move us closer to the goals we want to achieve in our daily work. So this is the direction I believe we should be going to. And I don't want us to just repeat everything we've been doing so far. I want us to intensify our activities. Thank you. Thank you, Darko, for telling us about this very broad context. And the conclusions I got from your contribution is that actually the wages seem to be the biggest boiling point right now. And the inflation is hitting the European workers a lot, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, where the inflation rate was really high. It's unlike in Spain, where the inflation rate was quite moderate in recent years. It was not alarming, but in Central and Eastern Europe, it exceeded 10% at the worst moments. So negotiating pay increases by 10 or 15% each year could come as a shock, but it is a reality we have to face. And European works councils are maybe not competent in that respect, but it would be wrong to ignore that topic at the corporate level, because quite a lot of tensions were created, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. And big transnational and multinational corporations need to realize that. So it has been a very interesting insight, and I can see that another colleague from Croatia would like to add something to what has been said. Very well, go ahead.
Upravo tako, ja se u principu slažem sa svim što je Darko rekao.
It's exactly like you said. I agree with everything that Darko shared with you. But let me also emphasize that it's very important to coordinate the work between the EWCs and trade unions. Why is this so important? This is because in Croatia, collective agreements and collective bargaining is somehow divided, and only trade unions are competent to negotiate that. On the other hand, EWCs are a source of vital information for us, and which information which sometimes the employer refuses to share with the employees. And this makes it easier for us to conduct negotiations if we have that important knowledge from the EWCs. When it comes to decarbonization, we are going to go slower a bit. I think that the European Union was too far ahead relative to others. And especially in the automotive industry, there is no way for us to stop, so we will continue. But what we need to do is to work on artificial intelligence, and we will also start to limit the intervention of AI around us. EWCs are definitely a very powerful instrument, and I would like to speak to our colleagues who have quite good experience with EWCs. Perhaps you could share more with us about EWCs. Our colleague is returning from Paris, and he was at the EWC meeting of General Electric, and Vladimir Tushka fills in for that colleague. And maybe I will ask the colleague who is a member of EWCs, and also maybe I will ask another colleague who is traveling right now to come next time and share with us more information. Hello. I would like to make a small contribution here. I would like to tell you about our present experience with EWCs at General Electric. We are a part of a G-Power group, and at our company, the EWC is a powerful body, well represented. I believe we started in 2014, and this good practice has continued since then. It was when Alstom and Alstom Power were purchased. And since that time, we have been involved in negotiations. For example, when there is a restructuring process planned. In Europe, we are always invited to negotiations. And this is a very positive thing because every voice matters. And we are involved in negotiations both at GE Power and GE Global. There is also a special section dedicated to wind energy. There is also us in the power division. And in Europe, we have roughly 20,000 employees. And there is always a restructuring process in any of the divisions. And we are always involved in that as an EWCs. And each country has its own representatives in EWC. And what we always do is we first try to minimize the impact of the restructuring process on the local business. Sometimes we are successful, sometimes we are less successful, but in principle, It's a good thing that we have this opportunity because we can, to some extent, minimize the impact of a restructuring process to a greater extent than if there was no EWC in place. In our plant in Karlovac, several restructuring processes have taken place, and we were always involved as an EWC. And what we managed to achieve is to minimize the scale of restructuring processes. Actually, not minimize, but reduce the scale of restructuring processes. So this has been my experience with EWCs in my country. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for these three voices from Croatia. It's so valuable to hear from your colleagues, hear your stories, see the issue from various perspectives. Even if we only looked at this one country, we have to conclude that the situation is quite complex, and not to mention the overall situation in the European Union. So you can see that we are facing various contexts, and despite all of that, EWCs could be useful and could be a powerful tool for employees and employers. Okay, the next organization to speak is Cartel Alpha Trade Union from Romania. And dear colleagues, the floor is yours. Please, who would like to speak about the Romanian context?
Widzę tutaj Georgianę.
I can see Georgiana.
Może Georgiana chciałaby.
Perhaps you would like to take the floor.
Nie chciałbym nikogo tutaj.
I don't want to nominate a speaker. I don't want to put you in a spot. Myself and Florian, we represent Cartel Romania, but I can see that our colleagues from Cartel Alpha are not present or they're not responding. Romania is a country in Central Europe. And so far, Romania has faced quite significant challenges, especially in the area of twin transition. Our economy is dependent on fossil fuels. The industry is quite reliant on coal. There are numerous jobs in those carbon intensive industries, and they consume a lot of energy. So it is a huge challenge for us to move to a reduced carbon economy. And also our economy depends on the foreign capital. Many companies are owned by corporations from abroad. And we are struggling with the decarbonization, of course, and we also have to eliminate emissions in our industry. We are also facing a number of challenges, just like France and Germany, because we need to move to a lower carbon economy. And this is quite difficult. Digitalization is also a challenge for us. But we can speak about some best practices because we have companies in the metallurgy sector where the employers work hand in hand with the trade unions And right now, for example, they completely moved to electric furnaces, and they're in a good, they are on track to implement the Green Deal completely. I haven't prepared a presentation for today, and so this is just all I wanted to say. I also wanted to give you a brief overview. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you, Florian.
Sper că mă auziți acum bine.
No,
Noi eram
Georgiana
programați
needs to
în,
mute the speaker of her computer because you are in the same room. So please, Georgiana needs to mute.
It's better now?
Georgiana needs to mute the computer.
Ok. Puteți confirma că se aude bine acum, vă rog?
I think now it's okay, Florian.
Da, mă auziți? Este bine? O să dăm puține detalii în partea noastră de la Compirom, de la intervalul
All right. Let me share with you some details from Romania. I would like to add some more information to what Georgiana has just said.
Câteva informații legate din cum își desfășoară sau
Romania is located close to Ukraine, and therefore we are facing some difficulties. But also, I would like to tell you about the situation of our companies.
Nu știu dacă s-a auzit mesajul nostru.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me at all?
Wszystko słychać. Proszę kontynuować. Słuchamy.
Deci să continui acum. Ok.
Let me continue.
Bun. Pentru noi, pentru partea patronală, comitetele de întreprindere europene sunt organisme esențiale și care asigură drepturile.
We are an employers organization, and for us, all the mechanisms related to EWCs are vitally important because they guarantee the rights to provide information and consultation to employees. We don't have a lot of experience regarding EWCs, but we know what EWCs are and how they operate. And we know that in February 2025, our EWC meeting was held. And during that meeting, they discussed various ways of cooperation within EWCs. Also, during such meetings, we discussed the content of the EWC directive, both the part relating to employees and the part relating to employers. As for the collaboration between employers and trade unions, usually the goals can be achieved when both parties are supportive and open to dialogue. We try to strengthen the rights of employees and of the trade unions so that they can have more influence on the processes happening at the companies. We have just started with the EWCs, I must say. A long way to go for us too. And we know that the Romanian industry is under an enormous pressure. On the one hand, this is because the energy is very expensive right now and the electricity, the prices are enormous.
În plus, pe lângă prețurile la energia electrică, iarăși, după cum știți, după ordinul
Apart
executiv,
from these high energy prices,
taxele vamale de 25% suplimentare.
I'm sure you were aware that the tariffs were raised by Donald Trump for steel, and we are deeply concerned because
Conform cu mediul economic, lucrul ăsta poate să conducă și la o scădere a numărului de angajați. Chiar
the
astăzi,
national
ziar din România,
policies do not represent the economic interests effectively. The press agency published an article today, and in that article, they say Romania is the only country where there is a group of 4 million people who are unemployed, and they stand a very low chance of finding a good job because they lack digital skills. They lack the new modern competencies that are required at the job market. And 36% of employees are now above the age of 45. It is also a problem. And we are delayed as regards our trade policy in Europe. And we do not feel protected from the tensions on the geopolitical arena. And we are also under a strong influence of a war in our neighboring country, which creates a lot of issues for us in terms of imports, transport, and exchange of goods with Turkey, China, and other countries.
And there are also problems with environmental standards and a tendency to make the economy more turbulent, and steel, as you know, is very important for economic growth, not only in our country but in Europe in general. We have to bear in mind the past of the European Union, like the Commonwealth on steel and coal. So we need a special support mechanism, social mechanism, and when we talk about EWC, we need a lot of work. We also a contribution from trade unionists to help the country develop economically. Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution. A bit unintentionally, I guess we have changed our agenda a little bit because representatives of organizations of employers had their time slot in the session after the break, but that's okay, that's fine. Thank you for this fast reaction. We didn't have representatives of your Romanian trade unions, so it's good that our organization of employers took the floor and its representatives took the floor. So in such a situation, I have the following suggestion. Perhaps the last minutes before the planned break should go to Spanish employers. But I have to say that I cannot see representatives of, I don't see them on the list. Do we have a representative of Spanish employers? So our partner from Spain, organization of employers. Usually I could see Miguel participating in our meetings, but I cannot see Miguel or anyone else.
I'm sorry, Dominic, but they are not in the meeting right now.
If it is possible, I have one more suggestion, please.
Proszę bardzo, mamy jeszcze chwilę przed
Of
przerwą.
course, over to you. You have still a few minutes before the break.
Because we have translated, I will speak in Romania. Ne așteptăm de la comitetele europene. Deci, ne
We are
așteptăm de la
hoping that EWCs
ajute și în
will
atingerea
help
obiectivelor
us
din sustenabilitate prin reducerea
to
birocrației. Ei sunt un factor foarte important în dialog.
reach and attain not only our goals in terms of sustainable development, but our goals in terms of bureaucracy. It is a path for dialogue, which is very important. And decarbonization, sustainable development, emission goals for 2030, 2050. These are very important things to us. Thank you. Thank you very much for this additional remark. I understand that you mean European committees for social dialogue, like sectoral committees for social dialogue. Is that what you have in mind? All right, thank you for this additional comment. I can see Marek is raising his hand. Over to you, Marek. We cannot hear you, Marek. You might have a problem with your mic. We can't hear you, Marek.
Yes, maybe the microphone is open in the Zoom application, but maybe it's not open. It's mute in the headphone. Some headphones has a button to mute the microphone, and I think that could be the reason in this case. I can suggest to keep going with the meeting, and during the break, I try to solve with Mr. Novak the issue with the microphone.
All right, perhaps that's the best solution, really. All right. You might have questions, perhaps. Any questions now as to what has been said so far, because we have had a broad representation of our colleagues from Croatia that were talking about their experiences. We've heard a little bit about the perspective of Romanian employers. So perhaps you have questions. You have questions, you are interested in details of these topics. Anyone? Any questions now?
Also, Dominic, I want to inform you that Mr. Guardiola is just joined the meeting, so maybe, I don't know, just for you to know that they are already here, so it's on you when you want to give them the floor.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I can see that there are no questions actually at the moment. I cannot see Miguel yet, and there is only 3 minutes left before the planned break. So maybe it is the best idea to start the break early, and after the break, on time, then perhaps we'll have the chance. Yeah, but we have Miguel. Miguel is actually here. Miguel is actually here. All right, I can see him now. All right, I can see him as well. Miguel, if you don't mind, maybe you can take the floor after the break. Maybe we can start the break now, because otherwise the entire agenda will fall apart. So maybe that's the best idea, to start the break now. Then we are coming back at 12:30, and then we will open the panel discussion, another panel discussion, and Miguel will be the first speaker after the break. Many thanks for our pre-afternoon and morning meeting. So see you in 30 minutes. Thank you.
Powoli nasi uczestnicy się zbierają.
I can see that our participants are coming back.
To może rzeczywiście
And it is 12:31, so perhaps it is a good idea to begin. Maybe one word to Miguel.
Marek miał problem
Marek
ze swoim mikrofonem.
had a problem with his microphone before the break, so perhaps Marek could be the first speaker now. And Miguel, you would be second. Is it okay with you? So Marek first and then Miguel second. And then we'll begin the panel discussion, which was planned for after the break. Okay, so once again, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me very clearly. I just wanted to refer to what was said by our colleague from Romania. We have to say quite openly that there are some benefits of EWCs, namely transparency and good communication. Unfortunately, for 3 years, we have had a war in Europe, whether we like it or not. It is a conventional war in Ukraine, that's one thing, but there is also information war. So we are flooded as the society, as employees, we are flooded by fake news, half-truths, lies, which are to disorganize Europe and divide Europe and European societies. And I guess the best tool to rectify false news, to correct it, there is no better tool than a good dialogue in EWCs between employers or owners of companies and their employees. And I think it is the best possible tool, and it is simply very effective because you learn about things at the source. And it is not like reading things on the internet where you have no clue whether it is true or not. So still, yes, it is a strategic industry. There is war. So it is strategic. And armaments, weapons, tanks, cannons, everything, all the weapons are made of steel. That's one of the reasons for which it makes sense to support EWCs, not only in the steel industry, when we take a broader outlook in order to have some peace and quiet within the society. It is very important to have the tool rectifying fake news and facilitating good communication. That's my contribution. Thank you very much. I believe it is a very important voice. So this aspect of information war, hybrid war, it is of great importance, unfortunately, and it is a test for European institutions for social dialogue as well. And we will see how strong our information channels are and whether they can show a certain resilience, because we discussed resilience in many contexts, also in the context of our societies, not only military resilience, but also social resilience. So social institutions, trade unions, organizations of employees should play a very significant role there. It is a new function which actually cropped up at this moment in time. So thank you very much for reminding us of the importance of that. Miguel, over to you. Now you can take the floor, because we need to hear the perspective of Spanish employers in the context of our discussion about the role of EWCs, the role that they can play in tackling contemporary issues. For some time, we've been discussing the European Green Deal and digitization, the impact of COVID or inflation crisis, and in recent weeks, we've also witnessed matters of social resilience, economic resilience, organizational resilience in response to a new geopolitical situation. Miguel, over to you. Thank you, Dominic. Dear colleagues, I do apologize for being late and connecting to your meeting much later than others. I had a family problem connected with my son. My son's school called me and I had to go there and take my son to the health center and then back to school again. So I do apologize for starting later. But due to this reason, I was absent at the beginning of our meeting, and I didn't hear the presentations and contributions of our colleagues from Poland and Romania. So I haven't heard what they said about their perspective, but I guess it is quite similar to the perspective that we have in Spain. Well, because we all live in a similar reality, similar context in a way, because we live in the European Union, and the entire society of the European Union faces very similar challenges in a way. So at the moment, there is a time of deep transformation and resilience. Economic resilience is tremendously important in this decarbonized economy. So digitization, decarbonization, these are not future issues or future challenges. It is part of our reality nowadays. It is the reality around us, and it affects us all. So all of us, we should join forces to face these challenges. So in the context of these challenges, I'd like to say on behalf of Spanish employers that European Works Councils are a very good tool to foresee and solve problems connected with all the changes. When we are talking about resilience, social, economic resilience, we see that there are certain priorities. One of the biggest priorities last Friday in our confederation of Spanish employers, we were having a conversation about consequences of one-sided decision of the American president. It was the decision about tariffs. Let me remind you that tariffs for European products were increased to 20%. Fortunately, this value is the same for all the EU countries. Thanks to that, we can respond together as member states of the European Union. And if these tariffs were imposed on Spain at 30% and Italy 10%, the situation would be much more difficult, much more complex, because then it would be perhaps it would lead to lack of unity among EU member states, and we would have more fragmented and individual decisions. And the situation in Ukraine, the conflict in Ukraine, the COVID crisis that has been already referred to, and problems with inflation, all these issues that we face in Europe have shown that we are at the risk of so many changes and uncertainty, and there are so many changes in the European economy. So we need tools that will help us to be prepared and will help us to react to problems like that. We have to be ready. We have to be ready, and we have to adjust. And I'm talking about both employees and employers, because we all face the same challenges. In our milieu, we could see Airbus or Renault, and in these companies, EWCs have found an alternative to close down the plants, because certain production processes were reduced and collective layoffs were avoided. So these are examples proving that an efficient social dialogue at an international level may strengthen the resilience that we need to have.
When speaking about the Green Deal, we have to speak about the electrification and decarbonization of our communities. We are all familiar with the context. So given the changes that will be dictated by the European Green Deal, I am at a loss of words, but I believe that our economies are struggling, are suffering. Oh, this is the word I was looking for. So previously we were very dependent on coal and on other industries that were dependent on coal. And I mean here the automotive industry or the oil industry. So what can EWCs do in such a context? They can support all the transition efforts to new economy, and EWCs also help to include the voice of employees and employers. And perhaps thanks to EWCs, we will come up with solutions that are better aligned with the realities and that will be more favorable to the economies. Enel is one of our members. It is a member of Endesa Group, and it's an energy corporation. And they have an EWC, and that EWC works on the strategies for energy transition. And the employer trains employees in the respective topics. Speaking about digitalization, digital revolution has become part of our reality. And this revolution is incredibly fast, and it affects manufacturing processes and also the industrial relations. In this context, we do not only have to deal with digitalization, we also have to deal with artificial intelligence. Robots, machines have also become part of our reality. Individuals and communities and workers who won't be able to cope with the new reality, and employees who will see artificial intelligence as an enemy and not as an ally who can help them with work, will face significant problems. And I'm speaking about individual workers and companies, but also whole communities. And I can give you an example from Spain. There is a company, and it is a member of the European Telefonica Group. And they also have an EWC in place. And they have developed a plan for digital transition. And this plan also covers new digital skills. Generally speaking, we realize that EWCs are a tool that help companies and strengthen the standing of companies. And it's thanks to EWCs that companies can be more resilient and also more competitive on the market. So our organization, SEA, joins projects such as this one because we strongly believe that we need to think about education, lifelong learning all the time. We need to educate our workforce. So we have to engage in projects such as this one and other projects where we would be able to share our point of view and come up with a common standing that will be shared by employees and employers. So generally speaking, this is what we believe in regarding the issues this project focuses on. Thank you, Dominic, and thank you all for your attention. Thank you, Miguel, for this very interesting contribution. It is more and more concerning when we hear about these economic turbulences, and they have become more dynamic, and it's difficult to respond to them and react to them fast. The tariffs imposed by the US It's a completely new topic. It's just emerged last Friday. And today it's Friday, the next business day after last Friday. The European Union has already responded to that, but there was no time at all for any consultation. And definitely, this new phenomenon is going to affect both corporations and employee organizations and employer associations. So definitely all these parties will want to come to the table, discuss possible solutions. So the situation is highly dynamic right now. We don't know what will happen. We don't know if it's just a very peculiar strategy of the US president, what he's doing now. Maybe he just implemented them to pull them out quite recently and then negotiate deals with the parties and negotiate the debt, which is probably the key factor behind the US efforts and activities. So actually, the situation now is far less predictable than before, and EWCs could have a stabilizing role for all of us, for the economies, for the communities. All right, let's move on to the second panel as we originally planned. And this is about setting up new EWCs in the European Union. And we thought it would be a good idea for the entities to speak for whom EWCs have not been important in the past. However, they were interested in other EWCs, but somehow they didn't come to establish one. So far, in our discussions, we've heard, for example, from our Italian colleague, that there is an idea to establish an EWC at a large corporation in Italy. So perhaps there are some news relating to this topic. And if Angelo could share with us, this would be a good idea. And also we can also refer to the discussions we've had so far. Among the panelists, we also have a representative from Poland, from the employees organization, and we are keen to hear your take on all of these topics. And also in our agenda, we have the Romanian Association of Employers who have already expressed their opinion. So I will not bother you anymore. And perhaps we will hear a voice from the Romanian trade unions, but I don't believe they have joined the meeting. So, well, we will have two panelists only in this part of our meeting. But this gives us plenty of time to share our experiences and views. All right, so let's now move on to the second panel. Angelo, the floor is yours now. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I apologize for my delay. I was struggling with a minor power outage in our offices. Right now, everything seems to be working, so it's fine. We have followed the discussion here, and I am now supposed to speak about establishing new EWCs, and that comes with a lot of challenges. That's why I am now referring to a Q&A document covering what has happened so far in our organization. And it refers to all the conversations we've had so far. And I think it will be interesting for you to see how the events unfolded. Okay, so how are we going to go about it? First of all, we'll present the aim of the discussion. And the discussion will be about the EWCs. So what conditions need to be met to establish an EWC, a new one, and the conditions relate to both employees and employers. I tried my hand at drafting a document outlining the requirements and actually defining the EWCs. And now I'm going to digress. Actually, even companies do not have the knowledge about EWCs. So explaining what an European Works Council is was an interesting experience. And that's the end of my digression. I believe in this document I am speaking about, you need to highlight the significance of an EWC, but also you need to highlight the challenges that are associated with this body. So, first question we could ask ourselves is what conditions must be met for an EWC to be established? So you have to examine how many employees are employed at the different establishments. Is the management ready to start a dialogue concerning an EWC? I talked to two establishments, one from the insurance industry and another from the transport industry. And during our conversations, it appears that everyone is vitally interested in establishing an EWC. But when it came to the specifics, well, the willingness was much lower. So first of all, we need a willingness from the management and from the employees. And that's the crucial thing. So we need to consider what you have to do in order to start setting up an EWC. So we go to the companies and we talk to them and we try to develop the documents and prepare everything. And it's difficult, as our colleagues from Croatia and Poland said. The document, this agreement, has to be signed by both parties. And in Italy, it's quite difficult to achieve that. But whatever you do, always refer to the national and EU level legislation. But also, you have to heavily rely on the understanding between the parties. Look around, and maybe there are some trade unions that will help you draft this agreement. This is something we haven't done, but perhaps we can do so in the future. And then we ask ourselves another question. What are the most typical challenges when establishing an EWC? And we were thinking about this. And also we knew how it's usually done when we speak to companies in Italy. So what we have seen is strong opposition from the management. And also I saw that there are quite a lot of cultural differences among employees from various member states. And also the different establishments from different countries and even the management from different countries do not communicate with each other. So what I did, I asked them how we could solve this problem. And I think that's the best idea would be to promote a culture in the corporation in which there is more social dialogue, more understanding. And in order to achieve that, we need to train employee representatives. And this is another obstacle we have come across because we strive really hard to push things forward, but the effect is often far from desirable. So it's very difficult to achieve an understanding between the parties. EWCs can rely on the experience from other countries. You can definitely ask colleagues from other countries, for example, Poland, because you seem to be quite proficient, but also the colleagues from Romania also seem to be knowledgeable. And we can ask for their help. We can ask them what the journey was in their countries to establish an EWC, because that's the path that we may follow in our country. And this all brought us to a moment in which we came to realize that the biggest obstacle in Italy are the companies themselves. But when speaking to the management, but maybe not the top management, but from the middle level management, we realized with them that EWCs are an excellent possibility to strengthen the social dialogue and improve the working conditions. So these challenges and these prerequisites are very important to cover if you want to be successful in your initiative to establish EWCs. So I drafted this document. It's several pages long, but I believe it has some useful information and it's very concrete and specific, and you can use it. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Thank you for telling us about your way of establishing EWCs. Yeah, indeed, the beginning is always very difficult, and you need to collect so much information. And also, speaking quite openly with you and being quite frank, establishing an EWC is not easy. It's much more difficult than establishing a trade union at a company level. It requires coordination between different establishments within a corporation, communicating across the borders, communicating with the central government, management, communicating with members from other countries. There is a language barrier that comes into play. And also this is a very formal process. You need to establish the special negotiating body that will be tasked with drafting the agreement. And actually, it's the agreement that it's the constituting document for the EWC. And it has to be a permanent document, not a temporary one. It will be in force for the entire duration of an EWC. It may be, of course, amended, but it's very difficult. So you need to put a lot of effort into drafting the initial agreement of a high standard, good quality. And undoubtedly, you need support from European Federation or from experienced colleagues from other EWCs. This is crucial to get support from such partners. And it's not a trifle matter, and you need to be well prepared. But we have already spoken about this, and there were meetings dedicated to establishing an EWC, so perhaps I will not dwell on this topic any longer. And I would like to invite now to the floor a representative from the Leviathan Confederation of Employees from Poland, and I would like to ask them to share their experiences and their assessment on the role of EWCs, because Leviathan is a crucial social partner in Poland. Very well. Who would like to speak?
Perhaps I will begin if Kamila agrees. I may go first. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join the seminar. I'm the director of the Department for Labor at the Confederation called Leviathan. We are a representative organization within social dialogue structures in Poland. And I listened very carefully to previous contributions and presentations and experiences connected with functioning of EWCs in Europe, especially because we haven't had too much experience in functioning of EWCs, and I have to admit that because we bring together a few thousands of large and medium-sized entities, the topic of EWCs appears, well, quite rarely in our organizations. So in our organization, hence practical experiences from other participants were of great interest to me. When we talk about EWCs, and as our colleague from Spain has mentioned, well, EWCs seem to be a solution which is highly significant in current conditions. So a very high dynamic of social and economic changes and events, many issues connected with the war in the neighboring country, then different turbulences and difficulties in international contracts, supply chains. These things sometimes even happen overnight, and they have their consequences for individual companies, then tariffs, green transition, digital transition, and all. Due to all these factors, the dialogue is of great significance, of special importance, both at the national and the European level. And this dialogue diagnoses all these challenges and opportunities for solutions in the best possible way. So this positive approach to EWCs is there, but what is of even greater interest to us, I mean us, like employers and companies, it is not only the current functioning of the EWCs, but also an element of the future functioning of EWCs. So a draft directive changing EWCs. I guess we are less optimistic there because especially when you think about the position of the European Parliament, namely definitions of transnational affairs, transnational matters, or suspension of business decisions till the moment when the decision is made or the verdict is passed by a competent court, to what extent certain things belong to EWCs or not, expert support. So there are topics which we hope that under negotiations at the EU level will be more precisely defined. But as for EWCs and their functioning, it is quite an interesting institution from the perspective of, I don't want to say competitiveness because that's the wrong word, but I'm thinking about other institutions of social dialogue. Now we have a big representation of trade unions, so collective bargaining, collective agreements. These are key instruments, and it is supplemented. There is a certain overlap, obviously, but it is supplemented by EWCs, both European and national EWCs. In Poland, our EWCs are just consultation bodies. They do not have the right to conclude collective bargaining or collective agreements. From the Polish perspective or individual member states, I think that, well, it's been mentioned by one of the speakers, I think that European Works Councils can be interesting not only for national trade unions, but also for entrepreneurs from branches in the individual member states. So this information exchange on EWCs and then information exchange between national trade unions and branches of individual enterprises and companies, it might be significant from the perspective of foreseeing certain events and a better information exchange, efficiency in terms of undertaking further actions, further steps. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dominic, I guess that's all from me, because as I'm saying, unfortunately, we haven't had too many experiences in EWCs. So I guess you have more knowledge than me. I don't want to quote too many numbers, but a very small fraction of Polish entities is entitled to set up EWC. And I'm not sure whether a Polish transnational entity has set up an EWC at all. So that's all from me for now. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution and presenting your perspective. And it is actually in line with the results of our studies. So I am very glad that you have actually confirmed what we have found out. It is true that the number of companies with Polish capital or with headquarters, main headquarters in Poland, the number of companies that would be entitled to will have the right to set up an EWC. Well, this number is very small. We have an EWC in Orlen, so it is a large fuel concern in Poland. I guess that's the biggest one actually in Europe, if I remember correctly, or if the information that I have read recently is correct. So there is one more EWC, which was established beforehand in Arctic paper, but this company is the company with Scandinavian capital that decided to set up an EWC on the basis of the Polish law, due to the fact that Polish law seemed more beneficial from their perspective than the Scandinavian legislation. So that's the end of our list, actually. That's the end of the list of EWCs in Poland, unless something has happened very recently. I haven't checked it right now, but I haven't received any signals about that. So I don't think any new EWC was set up recently. All right, then. So now, well, thank you very much for your remarks. I'm just checking whether we have representatives of a trade union from Romania, Cartel Alpha, but I don't think they are present. So, if that's the case, we have quite a lot of time to have our discussion continued. So almost the full 60 minutes towards the end of our meeting, I have prepared, or for this slot, towards the end of our agenda, I have a short presentation about deliverables of our project. So I will need like 5 up to 10 minutes towards the end of our meeting, but up to then, we can continue our discussion. So do we have any questions, or do we have any remarks? Do we have anyone who would need more time to voice their opinions or to add more details? That's the perfect time to do that, so don't hesitate. Also, think about your questions. Or if there are no hands up, let me refer to what was asked or mentioned in the chat, because actually there is a question in the chat. Is it possible to set up an EWC in a company which has its main headquarters in India, but at the same time several branches in European countries? So I've answered in the chat that I think the answer is yes. It is about offices in Europe. Obviously, Europe meaning the European Union in this context. We have to be very precise about that in this context. And obviously, it must meet certain criteria as to the size of employment. The number of employees in these branches in the European Union member states must amount to at least 1,000 employees and at least 150 employees in each of the branches. So these are the criteria which are quite strict, and they need to be checked simply whether the criteria are met for this company. If they are met, the answer is yes, you can start thinking about setting up the European Works Council there. I can see that Alvaro has his hands up, so over to you, Alvaro. Yes. I wanted to share with you a short remark, actually. It was like the last thing asked in the chat. Yes, you can open an EWC like that. There are many EWCs like that, like in IBM, it is an international company from the US, right, with its origins in the US, but they also have their offices and establishments in the EU member states, and the criteria mentioned by Dominic are met. So at least 2 EU member states with establishments of that company, a specific number of employees, and so on and so forth. I would say that investment funds from the US, which have their branches in the European Union, they also have EWCs, but obviously all these conditions need to be met. All the conditions specified in the directive need to be met. So Dominic has mentioned that. But as for the main headquarters, well, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. Yes, absolutely right and correct. It is typical of a European economic model that, oh, sorry, it is typical of the European social model. What is of key importance is not the main headquarters of a company or the origin of the capital for the company, but what is of key importance is the criterion where work is performed or whether they function in business terms in the European Union, like employment and employment size on the territory of the European Union, and then you can establish a EWC. Marek Nowak, over to you. Welcome once again. Let me just comment to Józef Kawula was talking about at the beginning of our meeting. It was a very valuable role of EWCs. Unfortunately, due to economic problems that we have alluded to, there is a very fast transformation towards green energy, and due to that, steel industry has so many problems in Europe. And now, additionally, there are other difficulties like the tariff war, for example, launched by the United States. So yes, our situation will not be easy. That is why a social platform, namely like EWC here, is so valuable, because thanks to that, as my colleagues from Kraków can confirm that for some time we have done just firefighting, extinguishing fires. It is, no one is to blame. I mean, it is just a production situation, the context of the owner, like juggling the costs, trying to solve the problems, but we can see that it is like an surgery on a living body. So it is a very difficult situation, and we need platforms like that, platforms like EWC. So from our perspective, it is the only civilized way to listen to each other, to listen to each other's arguments, to have a civilized debate and come to some conclusions, or correct or improve or repair situations that come up all the time. So it is the problem not for our industry, but for our industry as well. Thank you very much indeed. Absolutely, that's the basic thing. I don't know whether we have enough time to discuss it today, namely the presence of the steel sector in Europe and its situation, economic factors, because economic actors are pushing out the steelworks out of the territory of the European Union. And as for security in this angle, here we would see arguments for preserving this sector in Europe and actually to invest in it, not only from the perspective of providing steel for armaments or for weapons, but also for the Green Deal, or because if you have like windmills, they are made of steel. So we have production of cars and so on and so forth. So you can imagine the number of sectors benefiting from production of the steel sector. So absolutely, it is a strategic thing. So the presence of the steel sector in Europe is very important, and the price of steel produced in Europe, emission levels, all these elements are intertwined very closely, let alone ETS system, which is about fees for emission of greenhouse gases that, as a matter of fact, influence directly manufacturing costs. And yeah, absolutely. So do we have anything else? Any other questions or remarks from anyone?
osoby.
Any questions to any of the panelists?
Trzymamy kciuki oczywiście za
All right, let's keep our fingers crossed
wdrażanie RZ-u
for
w
setting up EWCs
Infosys, tak?
in Infosys.
Czytam
If I'm
czatu,
reading
jest
it correctly in the
India.
chat, it is the Indian company, or the
Możecie
company with
się na
the
nasze
headquarters in
seminaria
India. Maybe our seminar
dobrym
will
impulsem,
contribute to that. Maybe it will
taką
become a good
inicjatywą
impulse to start the initiative of that kind.
Ja tymczasem
Let's keep
przechodzę
our fingers crossed.
tego
Now, let me
ostatniego
move
bloku,
on to
w
my
którym
last
pomagam wam
item on the
w
agenda.
pokazaniu,
It is about showing
jakie,
how
z jakich produktów,
or
jakich instrumentów wsparcia mogą
what
Państwo
support
skorzystać.
mechanisms,
Chodzi
what
o
tools can be used
obecnie funkcjonujące ERZ-y, jak również
for the current EWCs or
o zakładanie
setting up
zakładowych.
new
Pozwolę
EWCs.
sobie
So
udostępnić
if I may, I will share my screen.
za sekundkę.
Just bear with me for a second. All right.
Proszę bardzo. I tutaj, czy Państwo widzą stronę
Can you
internetową?
see a website now?
Widać, panie Dominik.
Yes,
Super.
it's visible, that it's
To jest
there.
właśnie to,
Yeah,
co
good,
chciałem,
excellent.
pokazać.
I wanted to show
Tutaj,
you just that.
strona, to jest
It is a
SUSEP,
website
tak?
of the
Tutaj
SUSEP
Państwo
project
są wszystkie
with
właśnie materiały,
all the
mogą
materials
skorzystać.
that you can
Akurat
use.
na tej stronie
And
internetowej
here on this website,
jest narzędzie e-learningowe
there is an e-learning
w
tool.
języku angielskim.
Let me
Jeżeli
show it
Państwo
in
chcą,
English,
proszę
because
bardzo,
as you know, all these materials are
w
available
językach
in
naszych
all the
partnerów
languages of
oraz w
our
języku
partners,
angielskim.
plus in English.
I ten
And
materiał
you can
dotyczący
see
organizacji
it
rad
here.
naukowych podzielony jest
So
na
materials on
części.
EWCs, they are divided into several parts.
Pierwszą część
Let us enter the first part, like introduction to EWCs.
Każda część składa się
Every part is
z
composed of
materiału, z którym można się
some
zapoznać, który można
materials that
przeczytać.
you can read through.
Jak widzicie Państwo, one nie są bardzo długie.
They are not very
Starałem się,
long,
żeby one były
these
jak
texts
najkrócej,
are like, but I
informacyjne,
wanted to
dają
pack
nieco
as much
swoją stronę.
information
Na
as
końcu
possible
można
there.
zadać
And
sobie
towards the end of this bit or this article, you can see the questions so that you can do some kind of revision and move on to the next lesson. So that's like an e-learning tool. You can menu to the right, you can click on it if you want to move on to another subject matter because it might be of greater interest to you. Then you can absolutely do that. There is no problem with that.
Co my tutaj jeszcze mamy?
What else can we see here? We have national
To
reports.
są te dokumenty, które powstały
So these are the documents which were drawn up on the part of the diagnostic
która się odbywała na
parts,
samym początku.
which took place at the very beginning of the project. Again, all the
Są
materials
dostępne
are
albo w języku
available
krajowym,
either
albo w
in a
języku
national
angielskim.
language or
One
in
są
English.
dostępne, proszę bardzo.
So they are available there. You can have a look. Spanish, Italian, Polish, and more countries, and there are national reports here.
Mamy tutaj też toolkit, czyli taki
There is a toolkit as well.
taką skrzynkę z narzędziami.
So yes,
Polski
I'm
przetłumaczenie.
looking for the right
Wręcz,
Polish
tak?
word for it because in English it is simple. It's just a toolkit. So a kit of tools or a box of tools which informs us how to set up an EWC, how to maneuver and how to organize this process. Let me look at the English version of this toolkit in order to show you what topics are covered here. So there is a short introduction and then you have information on how to set up an EWC, what is the structure, what are principles of functioning of this body, and what are principles of effective communication, how to organize meetings, because that's the core of EWCs. And there are several bits of information about the rights on information, organizing consultations, and certain topics such as training sessions and monitoring and evaluation. Like members of EWCs have the rights to participate in training sessions financed by the employer. We talked about it a lot. You can read about it in detail there. Obviously, I'm talking to people who need more information because members of our partnership are very knowledgeable about that.
What else do we have here? There is a practical guide, and you can see that you can select it directly from the menu, and you can download these documents from here. The practical guide supplements information to the toolkit. So it provides additional information in relation to the toolkit. It is more detailed than the toolkit. Also, it contains a summary of national reports and the conclusions from a comparative analysis. And it has much more information about the legal framework. And also the practical guide has information about the right to information and consultation for employees. It contains up-to-date information from last year about the consultation of the EWC directive, which is now being amended. And this amendment was initiated by the social partners, and the European Commission actually approved the initiative of the European trade unions and decided that it would be a good idea to amend the current text of the directive. In this practical guide, there is a separate chapter detailing the benefits of EWCs for employers. And let me emphasize that our project brings together partners from trade unions and employer organizations. And that's why I am really happy that in that practical guide, we included information for employers also. And I find it very important because it is often that EWCs are discussed only in the context of benefits for employees. So it's a very good idea that we dedicated a separate chapter showing the benefits for employers as well. There are a number of case studies in the practical guide, and these are case studies relating to EWCs in the partner countries, and there is always some detail about the legal framework and about the current situation in a given particular example. And we managed to identify some best practices from all over the European Union. So it was a good idea that these case studies made their way into that practical guide. There are also newsletters on our website, but they mostly provide up-to-date current information on project activities. But what I believe is mostly useful for employees and employers, it's the three instruments I mentioned: the e-learning platform, the toolkit, and the practical guide. And I believe this is all about the materials available. As regards our next steps in this project, we have already mentioned that we are going to have a final conference in Spain, in Malaga, in 1.5 months. So this is going to be a very nice meeting at the end of May this year. It's going to be a sunny, beautiful weather. So we're looking forward to this. That's all from me, actually. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask them or make them now. And I am now giving the floor to the project leader, and I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their expertise. And this is so precious. In the evaluation questionnaires, you always emphasize that it's so useful to hear the experience from practitioners. And it's, for me, it's invaluable that I can learn about the national context. And so I have no doubt that it's really valuable to organize meetings like this one. And also, there is a link to the evaluation questionnaire in the chat. Please take your time to answer the questions, and this in your national language. So don't worry about having to understand a difficult questionnaire in a foreign language. And I believe it's all from me. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and over to the leader, József. Thank you, Dominic. We would like to thank you because you have been an excellent moderator today and you have given us such invaluable insights. And in Malaga, I hope our conversation will also be very interesting, maybe less formal. I would like to thank all the participants, and I would like to see you in Malaga to summarize what we have done in this project. Malaga is beautiful, I assure you. I love Spain, and I am sure you will enjoy it too. And looking forward to see you face to face in person at our final conference. So all the best to you. Thank you very much for today.
Dziękuję serdecznie, wszystkiego
Dziękuję,
dobrego.
do
Thank you.
widzenia.
All the best to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Do widzenia.
Goodbye.
Też dziękuję bardzo. Do widzenia.
Thank you and goodbye.